Hi again, Corey. Thank you for your reply and link to your assessments of McGilchrist's book. I had a look at it, I listened to what you had to say. So I'd just like to explain a little further how I understand consciousness. I'm not saying it's necessarily a belief system, it's an understanding, it's what I've come to see at this point, to this point. I'm always open to expanding that awareness, changing my mind as the evidence allows one to do so. So consciousness, as far as I understand it, is not a product of the brain, but that the brain is a tool for consciousness. This is what I was sort of alluding to, or trying to say, really, in my last video to you. I understand duality is a creation of the brain, in the sense that it's passed on from brain to brain, person to person, through education, through mythology, and while scanning brains during different experiments, what is witnessed through this is evidence. It is evidence, but what is it that this evidence is really showing us? I mean, we can see on the screen, if you like, you know, the different things going off depending on what the subject is that the person whose brain has been scanned is thinking about, and what part of that brain is responding, is doing the thinking. Whereabouts this is where this has all come from, really, this use of left and right hemisphere. But I'm not sure that really that it's not showing us how the brain works so much as it's evidence of showing how the brain has been trained to work over the centuries, through handed down education and belief systems and the ways in which we observe the universe, the world, the universe. We've become this dual thinking species. That the different ages spoken of in the book you are reviewing, where the author McGilchrist perceives the dominance of left or right hemispheres as a kind of battlefront. Sometimes the left, sometimes the right, these different ages. The left or the right is the supreme for those times of the ages that were mentioned there. And according to McGilchrist, in his opinion, there's only one time that both sides were actually working in unison, which was around the time of Socrates, I think was mentioned there. McGilchrist understands the brain was working as one thing in unity with itself. In a sense, that is what I am referring to. That is the unity I'm referring to, or I referred to in my previous response video to you. The myth regarding the story of the Garden of Eden exemplifies the shift into duality, or dualic tendency, as I call it. I know dualic, of course, is not a real word, but it's one I made up, and I like to use it anyway. Sounds like a word. Dualic. The aspect of your video to which I want to address mostly has to do with the approaching age of mechanicals, and how the imprint of dualism as the usual way of thinking and interpreting what is seen as the external, our shared reality, both fascinates and repels. This mechanical mechanical understanding. There's a fear and a fascination. In my previous response to you, I mentioned brain training and training the brain to operate as one organ, the one organ that it actually is. It's operating in unison, so that it's a far better tool for consciousness to utilize. Looking at the brain, what I see is one thing. Sure, it has a definition of a left side and a right side, but both sides are made of the same stuff. So again, I'm emphasizing that how we are taught to use the brain is exactly why studying the brain operation through scanning and noticing which side lights up depending on the function the person has been asked to think of, has to do with an almost hardwired genetic training over centuries of human evolution. Almost as if in order for the brain to survive such a journey that it has gone through, it had simply had to go that way and compartmentalize to the extremes of duality. However, and this is the crux of the matter, we exist within the universe, and the universe is one thing. It's definitely and simply scientifically provable that it is not a display of two opposing things. The illusion, the illusion, and that is the word to use here, I think, the illusion of duality is human interpretation which has been handed down generation to generation for centuries upon centuries, until the brain has become that left-right thing. Now, on mechanics, the brain itself is a part of that machine. The universe is one huge mechanical object. It's made of matter, and within this machine there is a ghost, and the ghost is consciousness. Without consciousness, the universe would not exist. Sure, it might be, but there would be absolutely no thing in which to say, yes, the universe exists. So essentially it might as well not exist. Consciousness gives meaning to the universe and its mechanics. This is also why I say that the purpose of the universe is defined by consciousness, and that the mind print that I mentioned of consciousness has left a trail to which we can observe, examine, and make the only conclusion we can make based on the evidence. Consciousness aims to explore the physical universe. In order to do so, it needs to create suitable form in which to inhabit, and the human form is not suitable for such exploration out there into deep space. But it is suitable for creating that which can house consciousness and go out there. Therefore, consciousness is using the human form to create that which will enable it to explore. This is in some ways something that repels people and excites other people. But in general, the thought of I guess becoming or being in a robotic form or a mechanical form seems to repel many people. I guess we're genetically habituated. It's a habit of being in the flesh and identifying with the flesh of this human form. We can't think in terms of very easily in terms of transferring that consciousness from the mechanics of flesh and blood, a biological machine, into something more appropriate for deep space travel. Consciousness aims to explore the physical universe. It's that simple. So this is not to say that we are evolving into hard-hearted, cold, logical creatures, or that in accepting the notion that humans are being used to create machines we are somehow diminished in importance. It is a very important role. The hard part has to do with our thinking processes, what we do with data, through our tendency to act and react in the mind battle of duality. We think of ourselves as the container rather than as consciousness. This is the product of dual thinking and is evident in the way we humans behave together. If we could relearn our thinking regarding what we are, we can free ourselves from the attachment of this human form. It is this attachment which inhibits us and induces fear of the machinery of the universe and our capabilities to create that machinery. If we understood that we are consciousness using the stuff of the universe, indeed using the human form to create a more practical form through which to experience the rigours of the cosmos, and travel through that cosmos with the intention of discovery and utilisation, we might enable ourselves to let go of the things which at present distract us from that task. There are many of those things that are distracting us from that task. But having said that, it is my intuitive reasoning which I guess confides in my understanding that consciousness will succeed in its task to create the necessary mechanical form or forms which will be able to contain said consciousness, even if the bulk of human beings continue down the path of duality and into its inevitable destructive conclusion. But why do I say this? It's because I expect that there is a portion of humanity which is working on this very thing and is relatively free from the duality-induced human dramas and its effects on the world's population in general. It is not so much that it's happening secretly even, inasmuch that it's happening despite the human drama, because the fixation and assumed safety of thinking dualistically as a tool for survival, which is, I think, is where dualisticness came into things, became that hardwired thing, and so that's the general population is compelled by this duality, and it causes the population to see such an agenda as this as being evil or heartless, etc. And it would destroy, the duality would destroy that project if it had half the chance. So therefore the project is secret, not because it necessarily desires to be, those involved in it are desiring it that way, but because the general population and dualistic attitudes of the population force it to be secretive. But in my mind, at least, I suspect that this is what consciousness, that aspect of consciousness, remember that picture that I showed, I'll show it again, but it's of that whirling storm, and that storm represents, this hurricane represents the human drama I'm talking about. The human drama, that the storm is created by dual thinking wars, whether they're gender-based or race-based or religious-based or the patriotism. All of these things, these fixations are left-right hemisphere things working, and if you're not an individual who has trained your mind, your brain to work as one organ, one thing, you're susceptible to falling to either or and being a part of the human drama. So I'll leave it at that, and I hope that has expanded on what it is I'm trying to, in the limited use of language, portray, to get a message across about what it is, what the problem, I guess, is with human beings, and what the solution is as well. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we can continue this dialogue further. Cheers.